Welcome, Attorney General Holder, to your 6th appearance before the House Judiciary Committee since your confirmation in 2009. We are happy to have you here with us today. Last month, the city of Boston and the nation as a whole was gripped with fear as the historic Boston Marathon, traditionally a day of celebration, was attacked by twin explosions that killed 3 people and injured more than 250. Dzhokhar Zarnev and his older brother Tamerlan Zarnev set off the explosions, then shot and killed MIT police officer Sean Collier and seriously wounded Boston Transit police officer Richard Donahue while attempting to elude capture. Tamerlan died after a fierce gun battle with police. Dzhokhar eventually surrendered after sustaining serious injuries himself. I would like to commend the FBI and all of the federal, state, and local law enforcement agents who worked tirelessly to identify the bombers and apprehend Dzhokhar. The Patriots' Day attack in Boston shows us that domestic terror threats are real, ongoing, and can have deadly consequences. In 2010, FBI Director Mueller and other intelligence officials warned us that domestic and lone wolf extremists are now just as serious a threat to our safety as Al-Qaeda. We have been fortunate that, until April 15th of this year, previous domestic terror plots have been foiled. The bombings in Boston remind us that the terror threat has not diminished, but that it is ever present and evolving. It is critical that Congress and this committee in particular ensure that our ability to detect, deter, and prosecute these threats keeps pace with this evolution. To that end, I look forward to hearing from you today about ways that Congress can amend the federal rules for criminal cases to make sure that we are able to prosecute terrorism cases while still allowing law enforcement to learn critical information to stop future attacks. I am also concerned about reports that in the years leading up to the Boston attack, several different federal agencies or departments received intelligence about the bombers. These agencies did not connect the dots, and this is not the first time that this has happened in recent years. The question that the administration and we in Congress need to address is whether there are any improvements that can be made going forward to facilitate interagency information sharing so that we can better thwart future domestic terrorists. I'm also interested today to hear about how the department intends to tighten its belt in a responsible way during this time of fiscal uncertainty. I was pleased to hear that the department was ultimately able to prioritize its spending to avoid furloughing federal agents and prison guards in response to the sequester, which reduced the department's more than $27 billion budget by approximately 5%. However, after learning of elaborate conferences with $12 cups of coffee, $10,000 pizza parties, and a vast array of duplicative grant programs and the purchase of a $170 million prison from the state of Illinois, I am confident that there are many ways the department can root out waste and duplication without harming critical missions. With our national debt at more than $16 trillion, the American people deserve no less. I'm also deeply concerned about a pattern I see emerging at the department under your leadership in which conclusions reached by career attorneys after thorough investigation are overruled by administration appointees for political reasons. For instance, investigators from this committee and the Oversight and Government Reform Committee have uncovered conclusive evidence that Assistant Attorney General Tom Perez, against the strong recommendations of career attorneys, struck a secret deal with the city of St. Paul in order to block the Supreme Court.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. That is not correct information. It's not what the subcommittee found.
The gentleman will have his opportunity to speak at a later time. This secret deal undermined the rule of law and robbed the American taxpayers of the opportunity to recover over $200 million in fraudulently obtained funds. What is more, the New York Times recently reported that political appointees at the department, over the vehement objections of career attorneys, decided to commit as much as $4.4 billion in taxpayer money to compensate thousands of farmers who had never claimed bias in court. A small group of female and Hispanic farmers, based on claims similar to those in Pigford, had made allegations that the Department of Agriculture had discriminated against them in administering its loan programs. However, According to the Times, career attorneys within the department determined that there was no credible evidence of widespread discrimination and that the legal risks did not justify the costs, and that it was legally questionable to sidestep Congress and compensate the farmers out of the judgment fund. Just last week, we learned that IRS employees have admittedly targeted conservative groups for additional and unwanted scrutiny just because they chose to exercise their First Amendment rights. This is outrageous, and Congress and the American people expect answers and accountability. Finally, just 2 days ago, it was revealed that the Justice Department obtained telephone records for more than 20 Associated Press reporters and editors over a 2-month period. These requests appear to be very broad and intersect important First Amendment protections. Any abridgment of the First Amendment right to the freedom of the press is very concerning, and members of the committee want to hear an explanation today. I look forward to hearing your answers on all of these important topics today, as well as on other issues of significance to the Justice Department and the country. And it's now my pleasure to recognize for his opening statement the ranking member of the committee, the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Conyers.
Thank you, Chairman Goodlatte. Today is Peace Officers Memorial Day, and I'd like to begin by honoring those who gave the ultimate sacrifice in serving our nation, the fallen officers who selflessly defend our streets and keep our communities safe. As flags across the country fly by at half-staff, our thoughts turn toward these brave law enforcement officers and officials, and I thank each and every officer for their dedicated public service. Members of the committee, first with respect to the government's subpoena of phone records at the Associated Press, I'm troubled by the notion that our government would pursue such a broad array of media phone records over such a long period of time. At the same time, I know also that the Attorney General himself has recused himself from the investigation, and we'll hear more about that. Policy questions on this topic are fair, and I want you to know that I intend to reintroduce the free flow of information which passed the House floor with overwhelming support, bipartisan, in both the 110th and 111th Congress. And we hope to do so with the continued support of members of this committee on the other side of the aisle. This Federal Press Shield Bill would require the government to show cause before they may compel disclosure of this sort of information from or about a news media organization. It's a common sense measure. It has comparable provisions in 49 other states and the District of Columbia. I would also note that the Free Flow of Information Act that protects the media against overbroad government investigation, and that has been commented publicly by many members of the Congress as well as the administration. Now, we've also learned that some employees at IRS appear to have improperly targeted Tea Party groups as they applied for tax-exempt status. No one takes allegations of discriminatory enforcement of the law more seriously than myself, and I thank the Attorney General for opening an investigation to uncover any criminal activity. And then there's no issue more important than the continuing mission to ensure the safety and security of the American public. The department and local law enforcement are to be commended for their coordinated response in identifying and apprehending the apparent perpetrators in the Boston bombings. I have no doubt, Mr. Attorney General, that your own investigation into this matter will carefully review and consider gaps in our counterterrorism efforts that need to be addressed. I also want to commend the Department of Justice and the FBI for their commitment to the most powerful counterterrorism tools in our arsenal, the federal criminal process and the federal court system. Since September 11, 2001, federal courts have convicted nearly 500 individuals on terrorism-related charges. Military commissions have at best a troubled track record and have convicted only 7 individuals and have never successfully prosecuted a U.S. citizen. Mr. Attorney General, your commitment to the rule of law in this matter is to be commended, not just because it's the right thing to do, but also because it keeps us safer in the long run. And finally, I'd like to recognize the dedication to the enforcement of civil rights and voting under the law. Under your leadership and under the leadership of the Assistant Attorney General Tom Perez, the department has obtained $660 million in lending settlements, including the 3 largest discrimination settlements in the department's history, has obtained a $128 million award, a recovery in an employment discrimination case in history, secured $16 million as a part of a settlement to enforce the Americans with Disabilities Act at more than 10,000 banks and other financial retail offices across the country. And last year alone, the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice opened 43 new voting rights cases, more than twice the number than in any previous year, filed 13 additional objections to the discriminatory voting practices under Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. And of course, all this has been done with devastating reductions in the department's budget that I will put in the record. And of course, sequester, which further aggravates this problem. That means that the cuts will affect our first responders, will mean fewer cases brought to court, fewer police officers on the street, fewer resources dedicated to keeping our citizens safe. And so I look forward to you elaborating on those issues raised by the chairman of the committee and myself, and I suspect that you will need more than 5 minutes to do so. I thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I return my time.
I thank the gentleman for his opening statement. Without objection.